Hey everybody, happy Monday. I've got a book review for you today. So I slogged my way through Das Kapital by Round the Cat, Karl Marx. So yeah, this was definitely, I like to go to the source material whenever I can. And this has been on my reading list for a while, so I finally got around to it. And, because I've done a lot of like studying about like Marxism and everything we're going through right now. So I decided to find, I read the Communist Manifesto a while back, and so I decided to read Das Kapital. I did not know what to expect from it, and I will say it's incredibly dry. He goes through like basically like he starts from like the minutia of of how labor is turned into commodity, is then turned into money and capital, and its value and how its value is assessed, and basically he does kind of get into like what people want, but it's also he basically like commodities value is just based on the labor that's put into it, according to Marx, essentially. But so he takes these sort of like and this is something that you see Marxists kind of do, like they take something, and Marx does this with economy and capital, where he takes like a semi-complicated subject but then makes it super simple and then complicates it in a way that it's not complicated, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like he simultaneously oversimplifies and overcomplicates the same concept. And this is something that I find that Marxists do all the time. And this is where it started. And so that I found kind of interesting, and he repeats himself over and over and over and over again, saying the same thing, not even necessarily in different ways. He just says the same thing over and over again. And again, that's something that's just like kind of, it seems like it's in an effort to kind of lull you into complacency, where you're just going, yeah, I get it, whatever. And then he'll like throw these bits of like religion into it all of a sudden, and you're like, whoa, wait, what? And so, from that, like, it's clearly not just an economic text. It's billed as such, but then when he throws these like these random religious references into it, you're like, wait, I thought this was economic. This is about economics, so that kind of gives you the first hint that it's not just about economics. But there was one interesting chapter. The chapter on the working day was very interesting. It's the longest chapter in the book. And that's just basically stories about what working life was in the factories back in the mid 1800s when this was written. And that I found incredibly interesting. Because there were definitely legitimate grievances that laborers had against their employers, for sure. They didn't have the safety regulations that they have now. They didn't have, the like child labor was a thing. It was super common. Children were often employed, in ways that, because they could do things that like adults couldn't, and they were cheaper to, so child labor was definitely a thing. Working super long hours in horrible conditions. Like there was a lot to, obviously there were a lot of grievances that were legitimate at the time, for sure. And unlike the last book I read, this one is full of footnotes, full of citations. And Karl Marx clearly isn't a dumb guy. you know, obviously well read. But I think that's kind of all he did. And, you know, and some of the citations were obviously of, you know, Engels, his partner. And so, you know, and he, like, I think he cited himself a couple times too. So that, you know, that was kind of interesting. And yeah, I mean, you know, the only reason I would read this really is just to go to for pure educational purposes. It is not a fun read by any means. And just to kind of go to the source material, which is what I always try to do. Now, this particular copy of it, who's the publisher here? Pacific Publishing Studio. Full of Madison Park, an imprint of Pacific Publishing Studio. Anyway, full of typos, like ridiculous typos. And they seemed to get worse as the book went on. And it was like whoever was editing it or whatever just got lazier and lazier, and also apparently wasn't really reading the book either, because I mean, it was just missing letters and periods in weird places, and like letters in weird places, and like at one point, like in the middle of a paragraph, in the middle of a sentence, it like broke up, like it was like it started a new paragraph, but it was in the middle of the sentence. It was just it made it even harder to read than it already was. Even more difficult than it was already. And now, I mean, even at the end, there were footnotes that weren't in the book. Like there was a number for a footnote, but then it like skipped it in the last chapter. There was numbers for footnotes that weren't actually there. Like so I don't know if they weren't actually there in the original text, or if the publisher just didn't put it in there. So like really sloppy version. Really, like, just like I said, it made it harder to read than it already was, because it would like put like a random letter, and then a word that was supposed to be one word would turn into a different word, and you're like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. Oh, it's supposed to be this other word because there's this random P there that shouldn't be there. And it's just, yeah, like, if you're gonna read this, get a different copy. Don't get one from Pacific Publishing Studio, because this was just awful. I'm assuming if they're publishing this work, I mean, it just kind of epitomized like the quality of the product that you get from Marxism. So yeah, if you're gonna read it, try to find a different copy, because this copy was terrible. But anyway, that is Das Kapital by Karl Marx. I hope you enjoyed this. Video. If you did, hit the like button, share it, subscribe, and I will see you all tomorrow with an all new video. Bye.